Another comment here: to affirm that the existence of a God is false, we must first have the exact definition of that God without ambiguities. Well, again, this is one of the notions that many atheists have, and we go against this. This is not the correct or the version of the scientific method that we're proposing. Okay, here is a contrast to that, so that you know what to contrast it against. We have to determine whether God is an object or a concept. If God is an anthropomorphic being or a burning bush, as Moses met, he's an object. He's a physical object. If, on the other hand, God is love, grace, intelligence, spirit, or who knows what, then he's a concept. In other words, we can't talk about him. We have to say that God is a concept. And you got to decide who you're praying to. Are you praying to a concept or to an object? Maybe you're praying to yourself. Maybe you're watching yourself in the mirror and thinking to yourself. That's all you're doing. Anyways, concepts we define, and objects we point to and illustrate. We name them, okay? What we really need to do is define the word exist. That's what we need to do, okay? And people don't realize that the more important word when we say God exists is not God, but exist. God is important because, in the sense, we need to determine whether God is an object or a concept. But only if he's an object can we say that, can we talk about existence. Concepts do not exist for the purposes of physics. Concepts do not exist for the purposes of physics. Please say it 10 times before you go to bed every night. Okay, concepts do not exist. Okay, here we have another comment. Okay, moving along. I cannot seem to find any evidence or proof that that eternal living beings do not exist. And if you have such evidence, you'll have to share it. Okay, what's my answer to that? Give me a second here to get these things out, but you got so many of them. Okay, in science we have no use for evidence. Evidence is what a prosecutor uses to persuade, convince, and recruit members of the jury. Evidence, as you rightly said, has to do with proof. In science we don't prove. In science we explain. In physics we explain a mechanism. In order to do this, we make an assumption known as a hypothesis. This includes objects such as God. We don't say, I believe that God exists, like the theists say, or doesn't, like the atheists say, or prove, like the agnostics say. Prove to me that God exists or doesn't. We say, let us assume that God exists. Then we proceed to tell our theory based on this assumption. That's how we do it in rational science, okay? So unless you understand these notions, these differences between what we're proposing, our rational scientific method, and what you've learned in high school or college about what science is, about proof and evidence, and going out there and doing experiments and writing equations, that has nothing to do with science. All that is religion as far as we're concerned. Science, as it relates to physics, is trying to understand how Mother Nature runs her shop. We have to explain mechanisms. We have to do it rationally. What do we mean by rationally? We don't want to move concepts around. We don't want to say that a field did this and time did that and mass did this and force did the other thing. That's what we can't use those words in science because they're not nouns. They're not physical objects. We cannot say that a concept did this and a concept did that. That's like saying love moves mountains. That's okay in poetry and ordinary speech. You can't use that in physics. You can't say that love moved a mountain. That's what these people are doing in mathematical physics. That's the physical interpretations, which they dismiss as philosophy anyway. They say science is math. Descriptions, because math can only describe. Okay, and here's the second reply to that, and that's that, we have to have a definition for the word exist, and we do define this crucial word for physics. Physics is the science of existence, and exist means physical presence. What does physical mean? It relates to an object. What does presence mean? It relates to location. If God wants to exist, he has to exist by definition, not because we believe or don't believe or prove him. If God has distance with respect to other objects in the universe, then he exists by definition. And before that, he obviously has to be a physical object. He's got to be an object. Otherwise, he can't be a concept. He can't be love or intelligence and say God exists. Okay. Another issue, another question brought up. A fellow says, "Who are you to define existence?" You now scientifically define words for the world? Okay, I got a baseball bat in my face there. Okay, what's my reply? Here it is. Okay, let's see if we can get it right. Okay, this is my answer to that. It says, in science, we must define strategic words in order for the audience to follow the dissertation. A skeptic or devil's advocate has a single recourse. He or she must define the key words in the alternative, right, in such a way that it can be used consistently, rationally, scientifically. Okay, so if the person doesn't like my definition, who am I? I'm no one. Absolutely no one. I define the word exist so that people can follow my presentation. And if you don't like my definition, okay, you have a single recourse, and that's okay. What is your definition of exist? What do you mean by exist? What do you mean when you say God exists? What did you mean by that statement? And if you can't answer the question, forget about God, but if you can't answer the question of exist, of what exist means in that sentence, in that phrase or whatever, then you got no counter argument. You got no rejoinder. Okay, so let's get it straight. You need to define words. If you're going to do scientific, if you're going to just go and believe in God, well, that's your problem. We don't care, Okay, so here's a. Let's see if I get this. Another comment. Okay. And this person says he doesn't have location. He is metaphysical. I love some of these answers and questions that people put out there. Okay, what's our response to that? Here it is. Let's see if I get this. Oh my God, trying to get this thing here. Metaphysical. You look up the word. What does it mean? It's highly abstract, subtle, or abstruse. Okay, what does that mean? Well, it means that if God is abstract, if he's metaphysical, he's not physical. And if he's not physical, according to the definition of exist, he's got to be a physical object. He's got to be a thing. And if he's not a thing, if he's metaphysical, if he's just an abstraction, he doesn't exist by definition. You're praying to nothing. You're praying to a concept. And aside from that, God has to have location, which means distance from every object in the universe. Okay, if he wants to exist, and he's going to exist not because we believe or know that he exists or we can prove it, but because we have a definition for the word exist. That's why we can say that God exists or doesn't. Okay, and we don't affirm it. What we say is, let us assume God exists. It's an assumption. It's part of the hypothesis. The existence of God cannot be a theory. Can never be an explanation. It can only be an assumption. Okay? And he who doesn't like the definition has a single recourse, and that's, please define the word exist. Don't beat us up on belief and other nonsense that's got to do with religion. Here we're doing science, and if you want to do science, all you got to do is define the word exist. Very simple. Very crucial word for physics. Physics is the science of existence. Physics only tries to explain or deal with that which exists. Okay, here's another comment, and it says, he exists outside of space and time. So now we have God has location, but his location is not within our realm. God exists outside space and time. Oh my God, that's, where is he? Let's find out. Okay, here's poor old God, and hopefully he's encapsulated or enclosed within some kind of medium. Maybe it's air. I don't know. Maybe it's water. I don't care what the medium is. You might say it's space, or you might say it's the fourth dimension or the fifth dimension. I mean, I don't know what you're going to mention, but the question is, what medium encapsulates God and gives shape to him? And here's God. This is the best I can picture him. When people say this, I said, God is encapsulated here by some black stuff. I don't care what it is, okay? I haven't defined what that black stuff is. And when I take the black stuff out, God has no shape because I have no contrast. So now what does God look like without the black stuff? So you got to tell me, what it is that encapsulates God. You can't just say God is outside of space and time. Don't tell me where he's not. Tell me where he is. Tell me what gives shape to God if God is an object, because we're going to talk about existence. We have to have an object to begin with. He can't be a concept, okay? Or it can't be a concept. Maybe a she, as many people say. And again, if he exists outside of space and time, just define the word exist and we'll know what you're talking about. The word exist, again, is crucial. We've used it for hundreds of years. Nobody knows what it means because no one has defined it. All we find in the dictionary are synonyms. Reality, being, is, actuality, real, all these are synonyms. You look up those words and they always invoke the word exist. Living, it's always has to do with it. So you're chasing your tail around because there's no definition of the word exist. So you have atheists fighting against theists, and they're all fighting about whether God exists or not. Nobody defined the word exist. That's the situation today. Okay, so it doesn't matter if you go with some of these gurus who talk on television, they debate the existence of God in different ways. Tell them to define the word exist, and you'll find out that not one of them can define the word exist because they haven't defined it in terms of physics, which is the science of existence. Physics only studies that which exists and tries to make sense of what exists. Okay, and here's another comment. Again, lots of comments on existence and God and so on. God created time and space. For something to create time and space, universe, they have to be beyond that, outside of space and time. Okay, time and space. They have to be outside of it in order to create this thing they call time and space, whatever all that stuff is. Okay, so what is my answer to that? Well, here we have good old God. Let's see if I can get him up here. Okay, and he's in his workshop, in his garage. Okay, and hopefully he created space and time before he created humans there, right? Hopefully he's got this conveyor belt. Okay, he's creating all these things. And the question is, how do you create? Tell me the mechanism of how God creates space and how he creates time. What has he created? How do you create time? You move your magic wand 3 times, or, tell me how you create time. And so, to say that God is outside of space and time, he had to be outside of space and time in order to create space and time, which is within him or inferior to him or outside of him. You just got to tell me what space and time are, and so that you can tell me how he created them. I mean, what do you mean? He molded them like silly putty? What are we talking about here? What do you mean he created space and time? How do you create a concept? You put a bunch of seconds in there and time comes into being? Is that how time is created? What does it mean to say that God created space and time? Please rationalize it for me. I don't care about whether God did or not. I want to know your reasoning. You have to tell me what the reasoning is. I can't go to God and ask him because, I have trouble with him. I'm angry at him. He's angry at me, so he doesn't talk to me anymore. So I want you to tell me, okay? Give me your peace of mind. Okay, and here we have another fella. He has another comment. Let's see if I can get this thing here. Give me a second. Here it goes. There are a lot of things in this universe that don't truly exist until observed or believed in. Also, existence has to do with observing and believing? Is that what existence has to do with? And again, this is my answer to that. Okay, and it's got to do with this as where in the definition of exists is there a provision for observation or belief? Okay, here you see the definition. Exists, physical presence, object plus location. an object exists if it has location. That means there is distance between that object and all the other objects in the universe. That's the definition. You don't like the definition? Fine. Please define the word exist before you use it in a sentence. Don't tell me I'm wrong. Don't tell me I'm right. Don't tell me you believe, you don't believe. Just tell me what the word exist means. And if you can't define the word exist, you have no case. And people don't like that, okay? They say, hold it, you're destroying my religion, getting away with it. All I'm asking is for a simple definition of the word exist. If you can define the word exist, which no one has been able to in 10,000 years, you don't have a case. You don't have an argument, okay?